Joel, thanks very much for joining us.
A pleasure, Roger.
What we're going to show the viewers is some videotape from 1973 when you were in St. John's, Newfoundland.
93.
93. I'm really digging this up. And you were playing at a Peace Accord, an outdoor festival.
Yeah.
And also at a place called The Loft, which is no longer a music venue. But in the video people see, there's a young woman reading your palm. I don't know if you remember what she said your future held.
That I don't know. Hopefully it was, bright.
But if she had forecast the future that you've had, is this the future you would have wanted?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I got into music and started touring, I haven't really looked back since. There might be a few things I would change or some decisions I would navigate differently, but for the most part, I feel really blessed to just continue to be able to do it, to be back in Newfoundland, playing again, and the fact that I could come here in 1993 and still be coming here on almost a yearly basis, to me, feels like success, even if I'm not a household name yet. So yeah, I'm really content with the. I feel blessed with the life of a music, of being a musician and being able to follow my nose and do it, make records and have people listen.
What might you have done differently?
Maybe express myself a little clearer, but I still do. I would try and do that differently, like 10 seconds ago too. The way I come to decisions or even express myself is through like a lot of conversation that eventually circles into the center, and I make my point when everybody's exhausted, So if I could have gotten down to certain things a little bit quicker, maybe. I can't think of exact specific. Well, and then there's just other things where, like in our old band Thrush Hermit, we were very much kind of ruled by democracy, which was what was both our strong suit and our weakness sometimes when it came to trying to make decisions quickly, but we had to do it by committee. And for the most part, we were pretty like-minded, but every once in a while, it was sort of like a city council, trying to go, well, do we want this to be are we putting a train track through here? Are we gonna put this song in this movie, or whatever? I don't know. Really, as I talk it through and think about it, I really, there's not a lot I would change. I learned from every experience, and the days in the Hermit, those guys were my best friends. We were touring all the time, and the democracy of it is why it functioned, and I think it was good. It's like learning to respect, and kind of make a vision that works for everybody. It only can function for so long. I mean, I think that's the challenge, and I think that's why I ended up with records with my own name on them. And my band still has a say in the way things go, but I can curate it much more effectively than I could when the band was about a band.
So when you started out to be a musician, I would presume you were driven by the vision of the art, but now you're kind of Joel Plaskett, Inc.
Yeah, actually, I think the vision of the art was a part of it. I mean, it was my love of records and rock and roll and punk rock and songwriting that kind of kept me going and wanting to sort of contribute something to the world of songs, I guess, and performance. But having said that, a lot of it stemmed, I think, when I got started as a teenager, social motivation, just to kind of have something to do with my buddies. That's why I asked my dad, who was a guitar player, to say, hey, can you teach me guitar? Rob's playing guitar, we can start a band. These were guys I had just met. I'd moved from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia to Halifax when I was 12. My family moved, and so I met these guys in grade 7, starting in junior high, and I'd grown up around music. My dad was always a player in Lunenburg, and I tried my hands at like drums and saxophone unsuccessfully. And then, Rob, the other main writer in Thrush Hermit, Rob Benvey, he got a guitar in like grade 7 or 8 and was taking lessons, and we were all getting into Led Zeppelin and the Sex Pistols and the Clash and classic rock and punk rock all kind of jumbled up. And I just thought, well, then if I learn guitar, my dad has a guitar, I can borrow a guitar, we can start a band. So it was a social kind of, and it still is for me. Like I love songs, and I really think that that's what's going to keep people coming back. But at the same time, keeping that element of like communication and like a party going with your friends on stage, and also in bringing the audience in on it, having it not get too precious.
CBC Radio used to be located in downtown St. John's, and somebody spray painted on the door, at the entrance of it, "Play the Clash." and it stayed there for years.
Yeah.
It was great. So whenever you walk into CBC Radio, there was a reminder.
That's great. Well, I mean, really, they were, the artist was absolutely right. I don't know. I mean, things get. The Clash are one of my favorites. As a lyricist, I think Joe Strummer is. He's highly regarded, but at the same time, I don't know if he's ever quite gotten the due that he deserves. I think like he took over the mantle from Dylan as far as political, social, and poetic and beat kind of writing. The way as I've heard the story, and I don't know if it's true, but that he got a typewriter just before London Calling, and that was how he wrote all those words. Because London Calling is just this like barrage of, and no slight on Mick Jones either, who was a great part of the Clash, but Strummer's lyrics just like. They're just like spitting out, he's one of my favorites. And it feels almost unedited, but it's really powerful.
I've never seen anybody spray paint on a building, play the Mescaleros. Right?
Yeah. Although, that maybe that'd be me. I love the Mescaleros too. But the Clash, Coca-Cola off London Calling, I think for me would be kind of the pinnacle. Yeah.
I read an interview you did one time where you said you wanted to make music on your own terms.
Yeah, I think I learned from I've always wanted to do that, and the Hermit always wanted to do that, but we were also came at a time when the Halifax pop explosion, everything was happening. There was a lot of attention. We were young. We had a publishing deal. And we were in Harper's Bazaar when I was 17. There's a photo of me in Harper's in 1993. Probably just the same summer that we came to the Peace Accord, they took that picture in Halifax at the Flamingo. But I guess like we had, then we signed a major label deal, and there was a lot of like restrictions to that kind of. We were given a bunch of money to make a record, and we did, and it allowed us to go to Memphis for 6 weeks and make this record with Doug Easley, and we steered our career as much as we could. But at the same time, when you're beholden to somebody financially, they have a say in what you do, what you release, how you present it, all these things, and it kind of comes back to what I was talking about as far as like decision by committee. And it's one thing to be doing that just with the guys in your band and trying to make a decision, and that's hard enough, to go, yeah, I like this. No, that's not a good picture of me. No, I don't want to call the record that. What do you want to call it? You can have that conversation. But then as soon as you put other people who have an interest in your band for, because they care, but also because there's some sort of maybe financial connection, it starts to get even more challenging. And that's not to say that I don't value other people's opinion, and I like to have that dialogue, because it can be helpful in terms of helping you. It's good to have your ideas questioned sometimes, because it makes you either stand up and say, yes, I believe in this so much that thank you for your input, but no thanks, So I don't mind a bit of that dialogue, but I certainly don't want to feel. I don't want it to be sort of the be all end all and have somebody draw the line. No, you can't do that. So I think trying to steer my career and make my records as independently as possible. And have control over where I go and when I want to do it, and have it be. And if that means it's going to be smaller as a result, on a business level, because there's less people involved, but I can control it, I kind of prefer that. And I have a great manager, a great agent, and all that. So I have a team of people who I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them, and I certainly value their opinion. And there's a lot of dialogue in that regard. But I keep a pretty close circle of people that I.
On the business side of it, marketing your music, how has technology changed that?
Well, it's changed it. I mean, like we could now sell out the marquee in Halifax based on the mailing list alone, or a lot of clubs we can put out an email blast and we can sell a bunch of tickets just using Facebook or, all the sort of the internet postering, all those things are kind of, you spend less money on postering, you spend it on internet promotion or whatever. But having said that, and in the 90s, I remember touring without the internet and trying to figure out where the club addresses were and phoning everybody and not having Google and using maps to get everywhere. And we did all that, and that was great. And it was time consuming, but it wasn't that big a deal. We got a lot done then. I would say I never sold a lot of records back then, in a time when before the music industry took a big hit record sales wise because of the digital trading and stuff. So I never really saw, what affected bigger artists, because they saw their sales drop and their revenue drop and all these things, and they had to change their whole mindset. For me, it was just kind of like, I've sold more records now on my recent albums. The trend has been, for the most part, for the record sales to go up, and so, as opposed to declining when the internet came along and everybody. Most of my records are sold I sell a lot at live shows and through, just to diehard fans and things like that. So the business has changed, but I'm trying to embrace the new technology. I don't know. The only thing I think that is the biggest distraction is the distraction of it all, from the creative, and we're on iPhones, and I'm no exception. And
So you released an album like one song at a time on the internet, or something like that?
Yeah, the latest record, Scrappy Happiness, I recorded me and the band, The Emergency, Dave Marsh and Chris Pinnell. We went into my studio, the Scotland Yard, and recorded and finished a song every week for 10 weeks. And I had a deadline every Thursday so that I could deliver it to my label, Maple, who would then give it to iTunes, and it would be released the following Tuesday. So there was basically a 4-day turnaround through the internet and the radio world. To CBC was debuting it every Tuesday on Drive. So every Thursday I had a deadline. Deliver one song, start another one. And a week's plenty of time to make a song. So it was an exhausting project only because it lasted for 10 weeks and I was turned on for 10 weeks, go. But it was fun. To me, it had an immediacy about it. I was like blogging about it, putting up videos, and it drew, it just had a different energy than anything I'd worked on previous because of that deadline, and I wanted to see how we would work under pressure. And also I like the idea of the album just at the 10-week mark, it's like, and it's done, and it's out, right? And that was, we put physical copies out into the world pretty much as fast as we could press them. After week number 10 was debuted on the radio and at iTunes, then it was like, to the presses, boom, records get printed, CDs, and we're on tour. And I've been very much living in that record all year, and it still feels new to me because it wasn't like deliver a record, sit on it for 9 months. Now it's out, and you would have changed it all by the time it comes out anyway because you're tired of it, or you're relearning the songs because you didn't do anything for 9 months,
So another business question. How important is iTunes to the revenue stream?
Well, they're a big retailer, the biggest digital retailer. And they've been a huge support for me in Canada. There's a really good bunch of people working at iTunes Canada that I've met, and a lot of records are being sold that way. I don't know the numbers. I think I still sell more physical copies. Vinyl's picking up again, which is what's interesting to me, and actually very satisfying because it's my favorite format. But iTunes is certainly a big part of the picture, and just because I think the biggest challenge of the digital world is I think that there's still a sonic issue. I don't think you're still getting like the highest quality audio, vinyl being really great and CD obviously being full digital files, but you're shrinking things for the internet when you're delivering it digitally, and so you are losing a little bit of sound. But what you lose in some fidelity, and it's getting better all the time, so it will catch up. But what you're losing, you're gaining in accessibility and portability, and as more people enter the world, the footprint that everyone leaves has to hopefully get a little bit smaller. Everyone's living, smaller spaces. You don't need you can have your giant record collection on an iPod. I still like my giant record collection.
But I'm going to come back to making the music, but I'm having a hard time doing it. So if vinyl's coming back, I guess I was smart to save all that old music from the 60s.
Well, smart in the sense that it's still the most resilient format. you know, my wife and I have a gramophone that you can wind up and play 78s on, right? We could listen to music if the grid went down, if we could get information, or we could pass those songs on if there was some sort of global meltdown where we lost all power and half the world was wiped out, but you could still find that gramophone in those 78s and be like, yeah, and this is what Hoagie Carmichael sounded like. See if you can do that with a computer with the zeros and ones that are, you know, all that digital information. I mean, it sort of doesn't exist unless the code is there. But vinyl is a physical thing with grooves, and you know, you can fashion something technically that doesn't even require electricity to broadcast that. You know, I mean, the speed would be an issue with 33s and the 78, but you could figure it out. You know, I think you could play a record, you could get information off a record using a gramophone, right? So I just like it as a resilient, artwork-wise, it holds up. If there's a skip in it, that becomes part of the personality. Whereas once a CD is scratched, it's virtually useless. I still think it's the most robust format, and sonically great too, you know.
You were describing that 10-week period as of making your album that you were turned on. How can you put that feeling, that feel into words?
Well, I mean, it's kind of exhilarating. It's fatiguing from a kind of, I'm always tired at the end of it, and it's hard sometimes on my wife and family in terms of me. Like, my focus is really, I can feel it in conversations when I'm with people, when I'm working on a project, or I'm really in that mode of trying to get something done, and then I have an hour to spend with somebody outside of it, and I'm trying to bring myself into the conversation, and my mind's still in the studio. You know, I mean, I think anyone who gets really focused on any kind of project, particularly something they care about, can relate to that feeling, right? But I don't know if I can put it in words exactly. It's just, I'm this type, I mean, I will be about to fall asleep at 2:30 in the morning, and then I'm like, okay, if I don't get out of bed right now and write those words down, I'm not going to remember in the morning, you know. So
and do you get up and go write them down?
Yeah. Sometimes, like, you know, with my wife going, oh, why are you waking me up again? You know, like, I'll get in bed, I'll lie in bed for an hour wide awake, and then be like, oh, I just got to get up again, you know. And that happens when I'm like in that sort of creative mode, you know.
Then after you get up, do you find yourself writing more than what you had planned? Just that I got to write it down.
Sometimes, or every once in a while you go back to bed and then you're like, it happens again. I should have just stayed up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know when my mind is going to kind of get rolling on stuff, and I haven't totally figured out the rhythm of it. But I find the night time has a lot, is definitely when the visual is taken away. And I've thought and talked about this a lot in terms of the way people experience music. But you know, when you buy a record by somebody, you go to the record store and you pick up a record, and you're driving around your car that day, or you're on your way to work and you listen to it and you're like, this is pretty good, it's cool. And then you're taking it, then that night or whatever, you go out in the car or at home and the lights are out, you're driving on a highway and it's nighttime and you don't have any of the visual distraction or seeing your friends or whatever, and all of a sudden you strip away the visual down to its barest dim lit necessity. All of a sudden your ears do more work and the music hits you that much harder. And I think that's where, and I find the same thing even on a creative level for me, like when at night, when things close in and things get darker, that's when I can usually, that's where the words start coming, you know, and music suddenly takes hold. It feels more powerful when I'm writing at 1 in the morning, sometimes by myself in my back room, and there's just like, there's no distraction.
So how do you balance the work-life sort of conundrum?
I don't know. I mean, I don't
Patient
know if
wife.
it balances or it goes like this, you know, or if it's more of a seesaw. It's a little bit
Your
of a
wife's
seesaw.
creative in her own right.
She's
so
an
maybe.
artist as well. Yeah. So she's respectful. Yeah, she understands. I mean, there's a challenge there sometimes. I think the work is not so much. It's the travel. It's the biggest challenge. Just going away so much. The livelihood is on the road. That's not going to change for me. That pretty much. I mean, if anybody asks me, if young musicians, bands talk to me, what do you do? You know, how do you make a go of this? I want to hear. These are my songs. I really stand behind them. You can spend all the time in the world recording what could be a brilliant piece of music, but if you don't go out and put it in front of people, that means taking the stage and finding a good way to do that and present it effectively. build an audience through, and that's what I've done. I mean, my whole livelihood was built off the road, from the Peace Accord in '93 with the Hermit, you know, and when I got going under my own name with the Emergency and stuff, that was just like getting in there with the fans who like the Hermit and trying to build it from there. And I've opened for the Bare Naked Ladies and the Tragically Hip and different getting in front of different bands and stealing a few of their audience members as well in terms of, and that's how you build your audience. But that's still the livelihood, because records don't sell really to any great degree.
You know, making your living by traveling, or having to travel and make your living, is not unlike fishermen in Lunenburg have done for centuries.
That's exactly it, and I think about that a lot, actually. And not to quote myself, but there's a song on one of my last, on 3, my earlier record, called Sailor's Eyes, which to me is sort of about that parallel, because I grew up around all the sailing songs down in Lunenburg, and my dad singing them, and there was lots of, you know, knowing that as being part of the community and the fishing industry and that whole kind of people going away for long periods of time. And so the words are, you know, you've got sailor's eyes. Even if you're not a sailor, I know you're leaving. You know, like that's sort of written kind of from my wife's perspective in my mind. Oh, my love, you've got sailor's eyes, gone before the first crow flies. You know, you're getting ready to go, and that's what it is. I mean, and it's usually a couple days before I am gone on tour where she's like, "You're gone already," because my focus is like getting my stuff together and trying to wrap, you know, whatever needs to be wrapped at home, and so. The ability for us to really like make a connection on that last day before I'm gone is challenging, because I've already got that look on my face, you know.
Yeah, there was a period in time in my life when I traveled with my work, and
yeah.
I used to explain it to my wife when she would have that look on her face. Oh, you're going, are you?
Yeah.
I would say, well, like Newfoundland men have been going to the sea for a long, long time, trawler. It's just like. And I got away with that line for quite a while.
Yeah.
So one day she said, "You know, I wouldn't have married a trawler fisher."
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, and that is the challenge, right?
So having a father who was a musician, did that make it easier or difficult for him to accept that that's what you wanted to do?
My folks have been hugely supportive, so I have no complaints or kind of pent up, oh, my parents, you know, drove me to this because they hated, you know, like, you know, some people are fueled by their by the lack of understanding that their parents had for maybe what they do, and a lot of great art comes from that place too. But for me, it's been the opposite. I've been really embraced in terms of what I do and supported by my parents.
One of the things that people talk about your work that I find interesting is that they find a certain whimsicalness or a sense of humor in it.
Yep.
Like on one level, you don't take yourself too seriously, though you're deadly serious, I think, about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked the balance of humor and sadness, or you know, the heartfelt, and I think that there's a chord that can be struck there, and actually I think it can be a really powerful one, like in terms of you know, in a movie, you know, if you make people laugh, then you can make them cry on the heels of that, and so I feel like life is both, and I like bringing joy to the stage. I like to have fun. I love to laugh, and I like it to feel just kind of casual, because if I can bring myself to the stage and not have to put on a huge air, you know, I want to get up there and go, okay, I'm here, and you paid money to see me do something maybe that you can't do, or you want to see me do, that's fine. I take pride in that. Go for it. But I'm not going to get so precious about it that it's at the expense of having a good time. You know?
In the time we got left, I want to come back to that 1993 Peace Accord thing. When you think back to those days, does it seem like a long time ago, or does it seem like it was just yesterday?
I feel every one of the years, you know, in terms of like physically and mentally, I feel like 20 years has passed. But I still feel like I'm kind of just getting going, and there's still a lot of places to reach, and I still like it. So it kind of in that way has kept me feeling young, because I think music has that power of time travel. For me, that's what my favorite records that I discovered when I was a teenager do for me. They teleport me to that moment when I was young, discovering it, and yet I still can be, you know, 37 listening to it and going, yeah, you know, this is it connects the dots, and I feel like towns do that for me. This history of touring that I have in this country of Canada and all these places I've been over and over for many years, I recognize that a lot of time has passed, but at the same time, it feels like a continuum, and it's a really weird thing. I mean, I think time is a kind of strange liquid idea. I don't.
You might come to a point where it seems like Jesus really passed quickly.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like it has in some ways. It doesn't feel like that long ago that I was finishing high school and we were hitting the road. Like it feels very close in that sense. The time has passed, but at the same time, when I get into the details and I start thinking about it, I'm like, whoa, that was that, and that followed that, and you can just, I think physically, like I've traveled a lot of miles, and so I can feel that, like I can remember the long drives, and so that sense of time and movement is really, I can feel it like in my body. I think like it's close in my mind, but kind of a little bit farther in terms of just feeling older.
Kind of listening to you between the lines, it sounds like your community is big. You have a relationship with all these towns and.
Yeah, I just think I think music. It's not just towns; it's people. It's all these. It's like whoever read my palm in 1993. I mean, there's somebody. It happened. There it is on video.
I thought the smile on your face was delightful.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not gonna die. Yeah, I'm gonna live till I'm at least 37. I really do think that music can bring people closer together. And I think that you can express the personal, and you can feel very alone when you're making it sometimes. But sometimes then when you take it out into the world, and if somebody sees himself in the experience, then it just brings people closer. And I really feel, also for me, like as somebody who I care deeply about music. It's been my whole life. As far as my livelihood and my passion, I don't really have hobbies per se. Music is kind of it. It's where I go. But music that's in a world that's constantly that's more and more divisive in terms of people in their camps. If you look at election campaigns and politics and just all the social issues that are plaguing, but people come out to a show, everybody sings along. You don't care what the person standing next to you, if they think that who they voted for, but none of that stuff matters, and it just kind of, I like that. I like the fact that I can stay out of certain things when I'm on the stage, and that's not to say that I don't have a voice about some of those things when it comes down to it, but I like just that for the couple hours on stage, a lot of that stuff just falls away.
It's nice to know you enjoy it as much as your audience enjoys it.
I do get a kick out of it.
Thanks for your time. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk with you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers.